All right, we'll call this board of directors meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. This board has a land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement that they've written. It's posted on the board's website if you would like to read it. Roll call tonight. We're just missing Keith with an excused absence. Oh, and Canoe's not here. All right. Moving on to adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Nancy.
I move to amend the agenda by removing the new business 6A and 6A-1 NNE manual amendment to clarify required elements on petitions because the document just isn't ready. Our NNE group could not meet due to the absence of one of our members unavoidably detained in LA. He's home, thank goodness. So,
Okay, sounds good. I'll second that. All those in favor?
In favor.
Move to adopt the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The board was sent the minutes with the agenda packet. Are there any objections to the consent agenda?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, those are approved. Moving on to announcements. Do we have any announcements?
Oh.
Nancy?
Sonia, do you want to go first or?
Yeah, I just have two quick announcements. One is that on Wednesday night, we're having the continuation of the budget meeting, the joint board and finance committee meeting. So we'll finish up with the budget presentation. This part will be the capital planning portion. And then we'll do a quick overview of the operational budget as well. And that's Wednesday, the 3rd at 7 p.m. And then the other is swim lessons are starting. I know that a lot of people signed up, and so Rec is contacting everyone via email, and you can look at you can either call the front desk at the Rec Center, you can find that number. You can either call our main number and they'll transfer you. I think you push 2 and it'll take you there and they can give you more information, or you can visit the Sudden Valley Recreation Facebook page, and it gives a little more information on there. I don't know all the details, but it's starting this week and they'll be contacting everybody. That's it.
Nancy?
I have a couple of announcements, and the first is about questions on ballot envelope signatures. And both NNE, when they register the ballot box, and Unilect, when they collect the USPS ballots, look at the envelope and confirm there is a signature on the signature line. Our instructions are to check a signature exists, not to verify the signature. And that's according to our NNE manual at 5.6.2 and Unilect's contract. So if later someone asks for a replacement ballot on a property that is already voted, we pull the envelope and talk to the owner that requested the replacement ballot and figure out what's happened. So confusion happened this time. because we sent Unilect a mailing address list that did not always include both owners, and it happened on my ballot too. In past years, both my husband and I were on the address line, but not this time. The ballot is valid if either of us signed or if both of us signed. And the same is true for anybody else in that situation. And the November AGM mailing list will have both owner names printed on it, like has happened in the past. So I hope everybody's happy about the improvement next time, or the change next time. Okay, and now I have something to say about the SGM status and an update, and it's one word: vote. Your vote is important in a stealth election like this is, because voter turnout is what will determine the election results. A stealth election is an election called for a time when most voters are either on vacation and will probably ignore the election and not vote. The other thing a stealth election is a single issue election initiated by a smallish group that will reliably turn out to vote in hopes they can win with a low turnout election. Back when I lived in Texas, stealth elections were a popular way for school districts to sneak in a special tax or bond issue past voters who were not paying attention. And they're still doing it. I looked at the Houston Chronicle and saw my old school district up to the same thing they were 25 years ago. So it works, and the key is paying attention. So pay attention to this SGM election and vote. Thank you.
Sandy?
I just wanted to respond to the announcement about swimming and offer whatever I can do next year, that the initial swim lessons are offered August 1st. I think it's just been, as a lakeside community, I'd like to help us keep ahead of that so the kids can be trained. But, you know, I appreciate it. It's come, but it's just with 3 weeks before school starts, it's a little late. Thank you.
Dan?
Dan, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's already addressed. We will be working hopefully with the current vendor to get an earlier start next year, but I appreciate your help, Sandy. We'll certainly take advantage of that.
Or we'll be putting out an RFQ for additional bids for other.
Yeah, I expect that'll be part of it too.
Okay.
Having one in place is good though.
All right, any other announcements? Move on to property owner comments then.
Yeah, 20 attendees tonight. So if anybody would like to jump in, we've just got the one round of property owners comments tonight. Go ahead and use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You should see that down at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a PC or Mac, or if you're on a mobile device, there's a little menu button you can tap. You'll see raise hand in there. Okay, I've got Linda with her hand raised. I'm gonna go ahead and bring you over here, Linda. Go ahead and unmute when you're ready. If you could give your name and address, please.
Can you hear me first off?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, just checking because I'm on my Kindle. Linda Bradley, 5 Wisteria Lane. I have 3 things I have questions about. Two of them have to do with the SGM, and probably Nancy will answer them for me. I noticed that on the website announcement about the AGM, it says that live Zoom is going to be offered. That was not included in the packet to the members, and it should have been if they're able to participate that way. And why that was left out, I don't know. I believe you're required to put that announcement in the mailer that goes out with the meeting information. And I wondered if she had any updates on how many returned ballots they have. Those are my two questions for her. The other question that I have has to do with the new building. You're bringing forward a capital request tonight, and also it includes some additional operational expenses. In April, our operating income was at a negative of over $100,000, and the budget was also over budget by $41,000. Year to date, our budget is over 60, a net of over 66,000. So how, with paying for the new facility, do you anticipate this is going to work out if we're already over budget? I believe I asked this question when somebody spoke about it, when you spoke about buying the building. And I just, either tonight discuss it, or at what time will the board present how they're going to work those numbers into the budget this year? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees here.
Let me ask Linda a question. You said AGM. Did you mean SGM? On your first question?
I'll go ahead and bring her back over here. Linda, I'm just going to bring you over briefly here to respond to Nancy. Hi, Linda. Thanks. I brought you back over.
Hi. Yes, Nancy, I meant the SGM. There's no mention of the live Zoom meeting on that notice to the members. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Yep, and that is because I copied over an older agenda that was just Zoom only. And it was in a real rush to get that package out by the 14th so we could have a full 30 days notice, and it just fell through the cracks. I got it up on the website that it would be a hybrid as soon as I could. And if all I can say is I'm sorry. That's what happens. That kind of thing happens in a really tight schedule, like we had to put together the SGM, and I hope the membership will forgive me. What was the second? Did we have a second question? Did you have a second? I can't.
The second had to do with the question that's on the agenda. So it's an agenda item, and we'll discuss that when it comes up on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, if that's that, bring on EJ. EJ has their hand raised. If I could have you give your name and address, please. I've brought you over to the meeting.
Thank you. EJ Leday, 6 Morning Beach Drive.
Thank you.
Very simple question. A lot of folks in the valley are wanting to know when El Agave is going to reopen, and is there an estimated time that you can, give everybody an idea? And that's all we have. I have to ask.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and return EJ to the attendees. And
The board approved the funding for that. We were accepting bids. That was approved, 3 weeks ago? And our hope is that it's finished late August or early September.
okay, anybody else for property owners' comments? I've got Rob with his hand raised. Rob will go ahead and bring you over here. If you give your name and address when you're ready.
Hi, Rod Gibbs, 14 Far Summit Place. Hope you're all doing well this evening, a little bit cooler. My question is several weeks ago, I had asked a question about how things were coming in terms of a formal project plan to replace the launch ramp dock. And you guys shared with me that we were pursuing permitting. I'm wondering, is there a formal project that we're tracking at this point?
All right. Thank you, Rob. I'll go ahead and return you to the
Oh,
attendee.
and I have one other thing. I've been informed that that the concrete pad, that the pier structure that was removed, there are some steel rods that are still in the concrete that are just below the water line. I think we should have our maintenance folks take a look at that so that no boats are damaged or anybody gets hurt. If you could get someone down there to take a look at it, that'd be greatly appreciated. And then I'd sure like to, well, I think a lot of the tenants would like to know, how are we doing with that project plan? Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right, I've gone ahead and returned him to the attendees.
Tyler's got a project moving forward on that, getting the shoreline permit and stuff going. So it's tracking. That shoreline permit takes a few months to get typically. So the likelihood of a dock this summer is unlikely, but we should be able to fix it next year. Sam?
I was over there. Another member contacted me about the all thread sticking up there. I went over and checked that out, and I did let Rich know. And I was over there looking at it. I actually went over to take a look because I hadn't been back there since when it was pulled. And there was all thread sticking up there about 6 inches long. And Mike Brock was over there. He was checking out the lift arm that somebody had damaged. But he was also looking at that, and they were making plans to cut those off. He had stated there was something that had been on there before that somebody may have removed. Anyways, you got to have protection on things protruding up out of concrete for fall hazards. You fall down and get impaled. So he was all over that. So I don't know if he finished cutting that off. Maybe Rich knows, but it was just four threaded all thread sticking up that needed to be sawed off, and he was going to take care of that as far as I knew. But I haven't checked back with him at all on that because he was over there taking care of it.
Yeah, I don't have anything on that, but we can find out. I'm wondering, we'll reach out in either in an announcement or to, we'll reach out, figure out Mr. Gibbs' email address and let him know.
All right, looks like that's all of our attendees with hands raised tonight.
All right, move on to general manager's report. So I'll pass it over to Dan.
Okay, thanks, AJ. So tonight, instead of the usual general manager's report, I've asked Richard Davis if he would be willing to come and talk a little bit about just from his perspective, sort of how being our attorney works and some of the different issues that have come up. We've seen a lot of emails and social media comments regarding a wide array of topics recently. They've been pretty far ranging, including the dock that's already been discussed tonight as well, the transfer fee, the purchasing of Sunmark property, records management concerns, just a sampling of some of the things we've seen. We've seen a lot of emails and social media comments of late regarding these and other topics, and oftentimes the speculation is pretty far off base. But absent more concrete information, as Mark Twain noted, a lie can travel around the world and back while the truth is lacing on its boots. So I thought to try to address some of this stuff, I thought I'd just bring Richard in here to talk about the types of issues that you're providing us counsel on and what that counsel means and doesn't mean for SBCA management, and just generally your thoughts about these and other issues and your role in advancing them and how the board makes its decisions in light of that. So with that, I'll let you take over, Richard.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So I'll start off by saying I'm mindful that, normally when I speak to the board, it's usually in closed session or I will draft a confidential memorandum. I'm mindful of the fact that this is open session tonight. And so I can assure you I won't be making any comments that are privileged in nature. But I did, kind of prepare some comments in relation to what Dan just introduced. A lot of people are in the community can sometimes be confused by what SBCA's legal counsel does. And I kind of want to clear that up and kind of give you some context for that. First of all, the board, there are allegations from time to time that board members can be individually liable for the decisions they make, breach of the fiduciary duties and the like. And that is true, except that in the state of Washington and many other states, there's a thing known as the business judgment rule, which means that the board they're legally entitled to rely upon outside consultants who can provide expert advice. It can be accountants, it can be engineers, architects, attorneys, any kinds of consultants, because a lot of times the board doesn't have that kind of knowledge. So if you rely upon outside advice from an expert, then you're protected individually by the business judgment rule. And I know sometimes that's a concern to board members because there's allegations made on social media and so forth that you could be individually sued. Well, true, but as long as you are relying upon expert advice, you are protected under that. So our role as attorneys is to issue advice and opinions. And we don't tell the board what to do, and we try not to insert ourselves into the business decisions. Those are hard decisions, and they're decisions for the board to make. And it's what the board has been elected to do by the membership. Right. So we try not to insert ourselves. Sometimes we may kind of touch on some business advice, but we let you know when we do that because our business advice is not necessarily any better than your own. When it comes to issuing opinions, oftentimes we're asked to issue written opinions, which are, confidential attorney-client privileged opinions to the board. And when I talk about attorney-client privileged information, we are the entity that we work with is the board of directors and those designees of the board. So the general manager, sometimes individual staff members, but the attorney-client privilege runs to the board. Only the board has the ability as a whole to waive that privilege. So just wanted to kind of clear that up. When we are asked a question and asked to provide some advice, sometimes the answer to that is clear. Oftentimes it isn't clear. And I've learned, even though I don't look at social media before I give any advice, or I don't look at social media at all with regards to Sudden Valley. Sometimes it's brought to my attention, but social media discussions I know can make issues seem a lot simpler than they are. There are a lot of factors that often enter into an individual decision. And when it comes to legal decisions, sometimes there's shades of gray. The statute might be unclear. Maybe your covenants aren't well drafted. Sometimes the case law is not as well developed as we would like. Sometimes we have to go to other states actually to kind of, figure out what a Washington court might do based on decisions from other states. If the answer were clear, we as lawyers would be out of a job. Right? Because we wouldn't have lawyers disagree with each other a lot of times. And sometimes if you get advice from us, you might go to another lawyer and find different advice. But we do the best we can when asked to give advice to Sudden Valley. Now, our obligation when we provide this advice, it's to the association. We have the best interests of the association in mind. It doesn't matter who's sitting on the board. We respect the fact that members have put you all in place to represent the association. And we try and provide the best advice, unbiased advice, regardless of whether it's popular or whether there are other people sitting on the board. It really is neutral in that regard. Sometimes we have to, unfortunately, tell you, that you can't legally do what you want to do. But other times the answer, as I said, can be, have shades of gray. And it's easy for lawyers to always say, you know, no, don't do that. That's a risky situation. But our firm is built upon the principles of we like to give you an array of options with attendant risk to each of those options. And then the business decision can be made by the board in an informed fashion, because you've got the risks spectrum, you've got the different decisions that can be made, and then you decide how much risk is acceptable to the association. The board isn't obligated to follow legal advice, but you're protected when you do. And I think that you do follow legal advice. Just a brief comment on social media. This kind of all started because sometimes there are comments made on social media that have incorrect information, that are personal attacks against individual board members and the like. And over the 10 years that we have represented Sudden Valley, I've been approached by general managers, various board members from time to time about the same thing. It's a constant situation. This is nothing new. And I feel like it's unfortunate when personal attacks are made, because I know you all are volunteering your time to serve in this role. The one thing I would say is not everything on social media requires a response from the board. You know, if you spend all of your time and effort, you know, putting out spot fires, it would be tough to get business done. On the other hand, there are sometimes issues that arise, I think, that you notice because you all are looking at social media to one degree or another. You notice important issues where the facts just aren't right, where, you know, misinformation is being spread throughout the community. And it's always been my advice. You've heard me give, you know, training to the board when we have new board elected. I give some training, and my advice has always been that when it's an important issue and there's misinformation being spread online, it's probably appropriate at that point for either the general manager or even the board to set the record straight. You could do that by publishing something in the views, or maybe issuing a special memo, or something like that, just because the members do have a right to accurate information. And if things are going off tangent online, it probably is appropriate to say something. Again, reserve that for kind of the important issues, not required to do that with everything. There has been, of late, crossing my desk a number of issues concerning records requests. We're generally not consulted very often about records requests, and I don't think we need to be. But they have been traditionally handled by Sudden Valley staff. And several years ago, in fact, we developed a policy and a form for records requests to be made to Sudden Valley, just to provide an organized fashion for people to make requests and for the information to be provided. There are three sources of authority for Sudden Valley to provide records. There's the Nonprofit Corporation Act, which was just overhauled and became effective on January 1 of this year. There is the Homeowners Association Act, RCW 6438. And then there is a provision in your bylaws that speak to records requests. Even though a lot of times I will compare Sudden Valley to a municipal government because of everything that it provides, its size and so forth, those three laws are not as broad as the law that applies to governments. Governments are governed by the Public Records Act, which is a very broad act, very extensive, and members of the public are entitled to get a wealth of information from governments. These three laws are not that broad. There's financial information that needs provided, minutes of meetings, governing documents, and the like. But it is fairly narrow. And honestly, for an HOA the size of Sudden Valley, it's probably a fortunate thing because while you're not trying to hide information from the membership, if you had to answer records requests to the same degree that, say, the city of Bellingham or city of Everson or Ferndale or any of these other municipalities, you probably have to have somebody on staff full time. You'd have to fund that position. A lot of governments are now have a position that just deals with public records requests. So Another issue that I know that has come up because I've been advised that there's comments made on social media about the removal of the dock. I know that's a controversial issue. We advised early on in the process when we became aware that the dock was not ADA compliant and hadn't gone through the proper county permitting process that it shouldn't be used. We've been involved in ADA litigation before. We advised that it would be prudent to take that dock out of service. Subsequent discussions, which we weren't involved in with the county, gave Sudden Valley staff an understanding that there were further liability risks given the fact that it hadn't been properly permitted by the county, and a business decision was made to kind of remove that in order to prevent it as from being an attractive nuisance and to reduce the liability issues. Again, reasonable minds might differ on that, but that was the decision that was made. Again, it was one based primarily on liability concerns, to my understanding. The transfer fee is another one that I know has been controversial. And just again, not to provide any confidential privileged information, but after questions were raised in the community about the transfer fee, we looked at this in detail. We studied, there's precious little case law or authority from the state of Washington, but we studied cases from other jurisdictions and issued a confidential memo discussing potential liability concerns with that transfer fee. It was a comprehensive memo that provided different options, again, with risks attached to each. It is worth noting that lawsuits are unpredictable by nature. Any lawyer who litigates will tell you they've won a case that they probably shouldn't have won, and likewise, they've lost cases they should have won. Lawsuits are unpredictable. We didn't have a lot of authority on this, and there's also a possible fee shifting, which means that Sudden Valley could be liable for attorney's fees of a successful litigant. The other thing that's important with lawsuits is we have insurance that we get, and that insurance has been increasingly hard to procure. Our insurance broker, Dan could probably speak to this better than I, but I know from having spoken to the broker that costs of insurance continually climb, and the difficulty of placing insurance for Sudden Valley is high. And so they have always recommended to be conservative and avoid lawsuits, because the more claims you have against your policy, the less likely you will be in the future to place appropriate insurance. So that came into play with this decision. And the bottom line is the board got our legal advice and made an informed business decision to take a course of action after getting that legal advice. Another issue that I wanted to make sure was addressed because of comments lately on social media is our invoices. Again, we represent the board. We send our invoices to accounts payable at Sudden Valley. We don't send them to the president of the board or any other board member unless there's a special situation. And over the years, with both Sudden Valley and with our municipal governments and business clients, we will sometimes send an invoice to the president of the board if there's an issue involving the general manager that's confidential. Because if you've ever looked at a legal bill, you will see that the entries on there show what we have done, what work we have done. And if there is a performance issue with the general manager, typically you don't want the general manager seeing that invoice. So on occasion, over the 10 years that we've represented Sudden Valley, invoices have infrequently gone to the president on that limited issue. Every other invoice, we usually separate our invoices out so that something that is unique like that gets a separate, we call it a file identification number. And just so that confidentiality of that billing is not observable by the general manager. But apart from that, it always goes to account payable at Sudden Valley. Just want to also kind of wrap up with the Sunmark purchase. I know that that has also been something that has been controversial in the community. The issue that we were asked to look at was whether the board could approve that purchase without a vote of the membership. This was an issue that we spent some time in looking at, thoroughly analyzed it, looked at the covenants, and provided a comprehensive memo to the board. This is something that we feel confident in that opinion. Again, you might find a lawyer somewhere in the community who might opine differently. I feel confident in the opinion that we issued to the board. And based on that, the board, again, made an informed business decision to go forward with that purchase. Whether reasonable minds could differ on the wisdom of that, that's a different question, one that we don't delve into. But I think the point that I want to make is that the board, from what I can tell, is making appropriate inquiries of legal counsel to obtain advice to make sure that you're acting in compliance with Washington law. And that's important. And it also, as I said at the beginning, is a way for individual board members to ensure that they cannot be individually liable. So with that, I think I will wrap up. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Richard.
Dan, I think you're muted.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
was trying to give you my thanks, Richard, but and I think he's gone now because oh no, you're still here. But that was clarifying, and I know that we all appreciate it. And at this point, I'm gonna have John move you out because I'm gonna pass the baton back to AJ just to carry on with the next item on our agenda. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Richard.
All right. Move on to continuing business with the Guardian Security Contract Amendment.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Rich here. You guys were already sent the memo and the contract. So due to the purchase, we felt it necessary to amend the contract to provide security at 1850. Similar build out. Looking at the stuff there, it is a proprietary restricted ADT. So we're gonna have to move everything to our new system. The timeline for this, as it speaks in the contract in this proposal, is that as soon as we approve this, this will be the next thing on their tasking, because it's unoccupied, and we want to be able to provide security over there that it can be looked at remotely, so that we can make the place secure. If it's approved, total funding from the SURF is going to be $10,285.79 with an increase of the monthly fee of $155 for a 36-month contract. So the motion that the board be presented before the board that somebody needs to make is move that the board of directors approve to increase the Guardian contract amount by $10,285.79 from the SURF fund and by $155 per month for the service portion from operations. Over to you, AJ.
Do we have any discussion on that topic?
I do. Oh,
Yeah, I just have a question, because, and thank you, I got the inspection report on Friday. This is in our security, this is a 20% increase in what we had before, so that's quite a bit compared to how big Sudden Valley is. But I did have some questions about the, and I know it's a little bit off topic, but my understanding when we purchased this property was that there was just a few items that the seller was going to address. And I just wondered, do we have invoices? Because I'm looking at this and we have 2 safety issues, 4 issues with wood destroying organisms, and a total of 31 issues that came up in the inspection, actually 33. And I'm just wondering how many of those did Azam fix, and do we have bills for that to prove that that has been remedied?
I mean, those are all minor issues, and some of them were just trim work, and you did receive that. 3 days after the inspection occurred, the entire board received it, and we received it before we'd made the determination and voted on this, before we went into open session. So you received it ahead of time. It's in your board email, and we discussed this in open session. So she repaired everything except the fireplace box, and that's something that the board agreed on. So every item in there that you're talking about, there were minor repairs and they were all done. Every one of them were done.
You're on mute.
It is off
I
topic, by the
didn't
way.
receive
It's
it.
off topic.
Otherwise, I
by
wouldn't
the
have
way.
asked for it. And if I had have received it, why did I need to have permission? Anyway, I'm just,
You
apart from
didn't.
that, I want to know, like, do you have proof that it was fixed? Because there are a lot of things. And when I see, wood destroying
This is
organisms,
not
I
the
just want to know
agenda
that that's been
item.
remedied. And I don't think that's a bad thing to want to know.
Sure, except it's not the agenda topic, and you did receive it, and we've already covered it. So that's something that we can place on another board agenda. If you are requesting that, that's something the board can determine if that's something that we're going to decide to do, or you can put in another information request. But I'm telling you right now, all of that work was done. It had to be done in order for us to close. Our insurance requested it and required it too. That was part of the agreement. So it's done. We did have this discussion. This was part of our closing on this building, was that agreement. It all had to occur in order for us to close.
Okay, so if I put in a records request, I'll get some
I
information.
can't tell you what you get. That's up to staff, and if it's a problem, legal can be involved. I don't have anything to do with records requests.
Why would legal need to be involved in just?
Because some things don't get released.
So a repair is a legal issue that can't be released?
I'm saying that what you're trying to do is bring something, you're trying to make this inflammatory, and it's not. They were all minor issues, and you had an opportunity when we had discussion and took this vote, and you keep claiming you didn't receive it, yet the entire rest of the board did, and you're on the board email, and we can see that you received it.
Okay,
We have
I was
proof
looking
that
for
you
it, and
received
I did
it.
not have it.
And
so I'm not gonna argue. It was just a question.
Right, but you're just making a claim, and I just want to be sure that you stop making inflammatory claims against your fellow board directors. It sets a really bad precedent.
How is that an inflammatory
It
claim?
sets a
against the board
very
director?
bad
It's a
precedent
question
to
see if
make
I can
false
see the
claims
repairs.
against your fellow board directors.
Asking for
And this
repair
isn't
invoice
an
is
agenda
against my
topic
directors.
tonight.
Okay,
I think
let's just drop this because it's not going to go anywhere, and we're just going to go back and forth.
What I was going to say, though, rather than go back and forth, I was just going to say that the really long and short of it is here that we purchased a building that was in really good shape and 4 acres and, 7 highly qualified board members who are professionals and are responsible people came about this decision with deliberation. And, the inspection report showed that Azam took great care of that property. And so it's in fabulous shape. So why should we be concerned?
all right. Do we have any
So regarding the
discussion on
item
the
tonight-
Guardian contract?
Sure. So regarding that item, just real quick, so to address the question that came up in owner comment, we have additional funds in the SURF loan to cover these type of capital expenditures for setting up a new building. That was one of the things that Joel discussed. So there's, I think, $50-something thousand that we have in there to cover these types of expenses that are unbudgeted capital expenditures. So yes, it's appropriate that they come out of SURF because of the loan is being paid for out of SURF. But the capital expenditure that's on this change order request was planned when we took down the loan. As far as the budgeting portion of it, that is part of the 2023 budget. The monthly payments that are requested in here have already been calculated into the monthly budget. As far as the concern, just real quick, I don't want to get off topic, but I would say watch the finance committee and board meeting, budget meeting on Wednesday, because again, it's not true. We're not operating in the red. It's not true. At the end of May, we had a surplus of approximately, I believe, $120,000. As far as operating, like when you're calculating operating over budget, we calculated a very conservative budget at 93%. And we've had additional expenditures due to the flood, et cetera. But we're still operating well within we still have a surplus, and because our collection rate is well over 95%. So it's not unusual for boards to show that they operate a little over budget on a regular basis. And if we have any kind of ongoing concern, that's when you adjust and make spending plans, et cetera. But we're not in that position. And all you have to do is look back at Sudden Valley historically, where there has been significant, overages of the budget. We're not there. We have a surplus in our budget. There's a difference between what the budget numbers are and when you're comparing it to better or worse of budgeted numbers. We know what that variation is in there that we're able to go over. We're not harming the budget by doing that. And next year, the operational budget actually is planned to increase over $121,000. So again, there's a lot of rumor going around that we're cutting the budget. That's not true. We are able to decrease the dues, but that does not mean that we cut the operational budget. So I just want to address that. These things were thought through, they are planned, and they're covered for next year's budget and also in the capital planning for the purchase.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that the board of directors approve to increase the Guardian security contract amount by $10,285.79 to be funded from the SURF account, and by $155 per month for the service portion from the operations.
Second.
Does anybody have any further discussion on security of the 1850? All right, we call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. And I believe that is the last item on the agenda, and then he's going to be bringing back manual later, I'm guessing. Sam?
Yeah, I had a question maybe for Rich. Is it possible to park Sudden Valley security vehicle in that lot in a spot to where it looks like we may or may not be in there also at the time? Because if I'm not sure how many vehicles we have marked security, but there's nothing like a fake cop car sitting in a place that kind of helps control things. So shift it around if you can, talk to security and check it out.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. We'll take a look at that to see what we can do for you, Sam.
Morgan?
Is there a plan to remove that fence, or is that going to stay? Or have you decided, or we decided? Do we know?
I think that's something that needs to come up in discussion between you guys and staff, and then we're going to come up with a resolution. Currently, right now, with the fact that we're not occupying that space, and so we're not there to provide physical control of the facility, I would say the fence stays up until we make a determination on
sense.
who's going to be in the space, and or if is staff going to move there temporarily, or is it going to have some other type of function. But I think the fence stays up until then.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And
I have a suggestion, at least about that fence. It's a good thing for right now to kind of manage the area. And I would not take that down until I had signs that said it's not what it is now. It's like we need to show ownership. And then once we have that nailed down, and we need to make sure that we're labeled, and then we'd be talking about that fence. Otherwise, I wouldn't touch that fence. It was a great idea. Made a lot of people angry when the fence went up, but I certainly do see a good thing for right now when I see it. And that fence needs to stay put until we start rocking in there and we do get signage. We got better security, so we could declare the sign's going to stay up for a month or two. I mean, the fence, and keep it managed that way, because otherwise, we're going to get swarmed to heck. We might even have people moving in. They start camping out all night. It's like we need a plan. Thank you.
And it's a pretty costly, that's a significant fence too. So it's going to be costly to remove it. So the better option may be just to determine when to leave the gates open as opposed
Can
to
we repurpose
removing.
any of that, or is that fence just does it have too much of a bad history with people and their feelings? Maybe it could be.
Well,
used
again, I guess I'm with Sam. That's a discussion that we have like at a future date, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's pretty,
fine.
yeah, we don't have enough
Just
information.
throwing it out there. You guys keep it in your brains.
all right, I move we adjourn.
Second.